We're quick to assume that every midlife issue, from mood swings to fatigue to disappearing libido, is simply the result of dropping hormones. And yes, my favorite hormone replacement therapy is a crucial piece of midlife health, or our midlife health puzzle. But it's not the only piece. There are other key molecules that quietly decline with age, and they have a massive impact on how we look, feel, and function. What if there was a molecule that supported libido and sexual function, protected your heart, boosted your energy, and even helped your skin stay vibrant and youthful? Wouldn't you want to know about it? That molecule, my friends, is nitric oxide, often called the molecule of energy. Yes, we need that. It's essential for healthy blood flow, hormone delivery, and even how well our cells communicate. But here's the catch: our ability to produce nitric oxide naturally plummets with age, especially during perimenopause and menopause. So, what does that mean for your metabolism, your brain, your libido, your skin, your everything? You're about to find out. Joining me today to unpack it all is Cathy Eason, Chief Science Officer at Berkeley Life, board certified nutritionist, and educator with more than 2 decades in functional medicine. Cathy has a gift for translating complex biochemistry into real world strategies. And today she's breaking down nitric oxide's foundational role in women's health, aging, and performance. Welcome, Cathy.
Thank you, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here. And that's quite an intro. I want to go back and listen to it again because it's all true.
It is. And we were just talking off air about nitric oxide and kind of how I discovered it. And I was at a conference in the spring, and Berkeley Life had a booth there, and you guys had nitric oxide test strips. And so me and Dr. Fiona Lovely, which we've already established, you know as well, my Menno bestie, we stopped and we decided let's test our nitric oxide levels. And I think like most women, you're just like, oh, what's the big deal? Of course, I'm going to have some nitric oxide. And my results came back zero. Like there was no color to it whatsoever. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is a problem. And I remembered, and this is funny, when I first heard about nitric oxide and kind of how it related to midlife health was with Susan Branton. Do you know her?
I know of her, yes. I don't know
Yes.
her personally. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, she's the most one of the most fantastic people. She's like my favorite to interview. Oh my goodness. She is like she's a sexpert, like a world-renowned sexpert. And I
Yeah.
remember her telling me, this was probably 5, 6 years ago. We're talking all about libido in menopause and how it declines. And she said, everybody's so quick to jump to testosterone being the driver of libido in menopause or the lack of it. And she's like, but number one is nitric oxide. She said it goes down. And with that goes libido and your ability to have good orgasms and blood flow to the vagina. And I was like, huh, I had no idea. So I am so keen on hearing about nitric oxide because I feel like it could hit on so many different levels for women's midlife health.
It really can. It is such a foundational molecule in the body. And I think that's why it's overlooked. It's too simple. And in
Yeah.
functional medicine, we always are looking for the root cause of an issue, but we forget to take it back to the very chemical and biochemical nature of our bodies, which is all about oxidative reductive reactions. And that's what nitric oxide does. It serves as both an oxidant and an antioxidant. It's a seesaw in the body that needs to function in appropriate balance at all time. And it has so many regulatory and signaling mechanisms for every system in the body. So we can make a case for it, of course, with hormones and blood flow and enhanced sexual wellness. And we can talk deeper about that, but also just metabolism, immune function, brain health, cognition, mental and emotional mood swings, things like that. There is not a system in the body that nitric oxide does not touch.
Oh my goodness. Yes, yeah, I had no idea.
It's like I said, it's too simple. It's a two atom gaseous molecule, so it doesn't. It's not sexy enough, right? It's just it's a little thing.
Right. And where does it like, is it something that we just naturally produce, or are we getting it from diet? Like, how does it work in the body?
Yeah, both. We have two pathways in the body to making nitric oxide. The one that you mentioned in the intro that declines is our endogenous in the body enzyme driven pathway. So we have an enzyme in the body called nitric oxide synthase, also known as NOS. We have it in several tissues in the body, but primarily we rely on its function in your vascular tissue, your blood vessels. And throughout our lifespan, that's where we're producing it from stores of amino acids, specifically L-arginine. Now, over
Mm.
time, as we age, that endothelial tissue inside the vascular vessels starts to decline. We are also exposed to increasing amounts of oxidative stress in this modern world. Probably
Mhm.
why your test strip was so low at the conference. It was just oxidative stress from travel and being in a big conference setting and hotels and probably not the best food you'd had in your life and all those things. And so we make it in the body on a regular basis, but that production starts to decline. So the form that we want to rely on as we age is the dietary form. So we intake the precursors to making nitric oxide, and that's our dietary nitrates. Primarily, we get them from our leafy green vegetables. The darker, the better. We also get them from beetroot, celery. Rhubarb's one of my favorite hidden sources of nitrate. I happen to
Ooh.
grow
Can that
rhubarbs.
include rhubarb cake that I have on my counter from my mother-in-law from the
Well,
weekend?
maybe not the most
With
concentrated form of
brown
nitrate.
sugar and flour.
Probably lovely.
Come on, Kathy, tell me that's okay.
It's okay in moderation. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
And it
As
was
I'm
made
eating it, I'm just going to tell myself, I'm eating this so I can increase my nitric
and it was
oxide.
made with love, and
Yes.
that is, increasing some hormones, as we know. So we rely on. I work with Berkeley Life. We rely on providing nitric oxide support through the application of dietary nitrates. So we're all about the education about eating these nitrates. But let me tell you about what I think is like one of the most interesting physiological mechanisms in the body.
Okay.
So you eat your spinach salad and you chew it really well. And what you're doing is you're breaking down nitrates in the food to the proteins that they're bound to. And even spinach has a little protein bound to it. You swallow that. The acidity of your digestive system, having good digestive function in your stomach, good motility in your small intestine, it pulls those nitrates into the bloodstream where then they are able to be acted upon by oxidative reductive mechanisms. That's just an exchange of electrons. It's going on in our body every day, every second of the day. We use those nitrates to break it down to nitrite and further again to nitric oxide, the two atom gaseous molecule. And we use it immediately. We use it for every system in the body. We use it even to fuel that gastric motility that I was talking about. So keeping your digestion going and keeping those nitrates pulled in. What we don't use, about 60%, is excreted through the kidneys out through the urine. We can't keep it all. We use about 20%, and the other 20% is recycled through the bloodstream, stored in your salivary glands.
Oh,
Stay with me here.
okay.
And then all day long, as we salivate, we are excreting nitrates in saliva that bathe the oral microbiome. In the oral microbiome, we have at least 9 families of bacterial species that live primarily in the back of the mouth. Now, those bacterial species have their own nitric oxide reducing enzymes. They help us break down the nitrates we have recycled to nitrite. That's what you're testing on the test strip. And then we swallow the nitrite, which is now one step closer to being reduced to nitric oxide. It's like we're eating our spinach salad twice. We're getting the
Oh,
benefit of those nitrates by all the fiber and polyphenols and antioxidants and vitamins and minerals. And we're recycling those nitrates. We're using some in the moment and we're recycling them for use again. And the idea is as we age, because our enzyme dependent pathway is starting to fail, it is starting to produce less and less nitric oxide. It's estimated by about age 40, you've lost 50% of your capacity to make your own nitric oxide. You're going to lose a lot of function, including hormone function and blood flow function, when you lose that much. So the idea is we need to keep up a daily habit of lifestyle and diet features that help us keep producing nitric oxide and keep that recycling system going. We need to keep our oral microbiome happy. We need to keep our guts happy. And we need to make sure that we're getting the highest quality nitrates that we can.
Yeah, because is there a difference, when you see a lot of cured meats now in the grocery store and it'll be like nitrate free. And I remember looking that up and reading about the fact that no, there's like so many of our foods, especially vegetables, have some naturally occurring nitrates in them. And that it's not really like, it's not the devil that we thought that it was. But is that because the cured meats, it's a bit different, or is it like a higher dose of it that isn't good?
Yeah, nitrates. This is such a great question. I get this all the time. So, charcuterie is really popular right now.
Yeah.
You see it everywhere. And maybe the occasional charcuterie with a better than option of cured meat that is nitrate free. And what they really mean by that is that they're not using synthetic nitrates. They might
Ah,
be using a celery salt, as salt has been used for centuries as a curing agent.
yeah, you
Celery
always see
salt,
that celery salt in the ingredients.
yes, that has nitrates in it. That's what's helped
Okay.
preserve that food. So that's a better than choice.
Okay.
The best choice to get nitrates is through the plant world, through the leafy green vegetables. And I'll tell you why. In the cured meats, think of it, it's a heavy protein food, right? Nitrates are very susceptible to oxidation if they are not in the presence of antioxidants. In spinach, kale, arugula, beet greens, beetroot, there are a plentiful quantity of antioxidants in that food to preserve the integrity of the nitrates so that they are more apt to go towards the reductive route to make nitric oxide and less likely to attach to poorly digested proteins that then become inflammatory in the body. So the occasional charcuterie with a better quality cured meat, yeah, we have been doing this for centuries, but it shouldn't be your lifeblood. It should not be
Yeah.
every meal, every week, and every party you go to make a charcuterie board. They should be used, consumed in
Right.
small amounts. And what we should do is focus on those foods that provide rich amounts of antioxidants, polyphenols, vitamins, and minerals that act as antioxidants to be protective into how we assimilate these nitrates into the body.
Is there a relationship between nitrates and oxalates? Because you're talking about all these leafy greens, and you always see, I just saw Dave Asprey talking about this on his Instagram, like, you stay away from the leafy greens, you're going to get too many oxalates, and these are bad for you. And is there anything that like happens between those two molecules to help break that down, or do they kind of can it cancel it out a little bit, like the harmful effects of the oxalates? I have no idea.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that oxalates are not the big bad wolf that they are made out to be. So I
Okay,
would disagree that they're, evil and should never be consumed.
I agree to that.
They are to the plant, they're an inhibitor, right? They have a bitter taste to them. Those oxalates make sure that when a deer comes through the forest, it doesn't eat every last leaf because it's too bitter and they don't enjoy it as much, right? It's partly there for that for the plant. For us, they serve a different purpose. And yes, too many oxalates in concentration can lead to certain conditions. They can contribute to gout, things like that. But again, in antioxidant polyphenol rich foods, that's not going to
Hmm.
happen. There are a few people in the world who have a genetic variation that they don't tolerate or oxalates, excuse me, in the diet as well. That's a very small percentage of people. Most people who have what they think is an oxalate sensitivity simply aren't chewing their food enough. They aren't breaking those oxalates away from proteins that they remain bound to. And it's those poorly digested proteins with oxalates bound to them that become problematic in our tissues. Nitrates and oxalates are often found in the same foods, but again, in the presence of good digestive function, chewing your food, and making sure you have got lots of different colors in your diet that represent lots of different phytonutrients and antioxidants, they're not problematic for the majority of people. We get this
Okay,
question a
good.
lot from the Berkeley Life product standpoint because
Yeah.
we've been accused of being a high oxalate food because we are plant sourced with our nitrates. So we did a clinical assay and found that one daily dose of Berkeley Life Nitric Oxide Foundation has the equivalent oxalate content that you would find in 1/25th of one spinach leaf. It's like point, it's like 0.07 milligrams. It is minimal to none, but we did the assay because we wanted to assure people that were concerned about oxalate sensitivity that this is a
Mhm.
safe and effective product for them. And it is.
Well, I'm glad that I asked then. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this probably has nothing to do with, but I'm glad yeah, that's great. Good to know because there's a lot of people that are worried about oxalates. And yeah, it
Yeah.
just goes to show that it's being over hyped. Let's just
I
put
think
it,
if they're worried
let's
about
hype about it.
oxalates, they need to return to their functional medicine provider and look for the root cause of their oxalate sensitivity. There's
Right.
a few people, like I said, with that gene variation, but most of us could stand to chew our salads a little bit more thoroughly.
Yep.
Start there.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And okay, so what is the hormonal piece to producing nitric oxide? Because doesn't estrogen or estradiol specifically help us to produce it? Is that correct?
It is correct. So we have to start with, first of all, nitric oxide was discovered because it's a vasodilating signaling molecule. So it opens up blood vessels, allows more blood flow. And from a hormonal standpoint, that's great. That ensures that oxygen and nutrients get sent to the glands that are making the hormones so that they can produce quality hormones and excrete them well, but it also helps those hormones once they are produced and secreted into the bloodstream, make sure that they transport to the tissues that have the receptors. So estrogen and estradiol, one of the things we know about it that I think this is a hugely important piece for midlife women is that as estrogen levels are declining, we start to see the same dramatic drop in nitric oxide production. And the reason is because estradiol and the different forms of estrogen, they activate nitric oxide synthase enzymes in the endothelial tissues near the hormone receptors. So they bind to estrogen alpha and beta receptors. There are nitric oxide synthase enzymes activated and expressed right there at those receptor sites. So with less hormone receptor activation, less enzyme activation, and now we see a dramatic plunge in nitric oxide levels. So you think about it, the estrogen is activating those enzymes to open up blood flow. I'm going to make more estrogen. We're going to send a signal. We need to get it through the body. As soon as we turn on that receptor site, nitric oxide is produced. It opens blood flow, and boom, there goes your flow of hormones. As women lose that as they age, they're losing that nitric oxide synthase function. They start to lose integrity of that endothelial tissue. There's more oxidative stress building up in the blood vessels. And now this is also where we see a direct correlation to increased cardiovascular disease risk in women. And we really need to get women to think about the fact that heart disease is still the number one killer of women across the world. And it's a very silent epidemic that doesn't
Mhm.
really get the notice that it needs. So we want women to feel, vibrant with their hormones, but we also want them to feel vibrant because their blood flow is helping, and nitric oxide production is helping repair that endothelial tissue, freeing up those tissues from oxidative stress. We can repair them as we age, and the benefit comes with more nitric oxide and better hormone delivery. We see better energy, we see less brain fog, we see better libido, desire, better orgasm, sexual function, and at the same time, we're protecting our heart and we're
Yeah.
protecting ourselves from that risk factor going down the line as we get older.
Do you think that that's one of the biggest driving factors of the increase in heart disease when we get to midlife is besides the hormones dropping? And I know all the hormones have something to do with heart health, but is that kind of one of the top things that's happening that is driving that risk up?
I believe it is, and it's coupled
Yeah.
with the increase in oxidative stressors in our world. So, as I know you've talked about with a lot of your guests, women are doing a better job paying attention to toxic exposure. So, they're getting the toxins out of their homes and out of their cleaning supplies and out of their cosmetic and beauty products and using cleaner things that reduce the impact of oxidative stress on our tissues. But we can't get escape at all of it, right? We know that
Hmm.
mental and emotional stress is an oxidative damager. We know that as we're, out having to commute to work, we're surrounded by environmental pollutants. So we can't freak out about all of it. We can control what we can. And but I think coupled with, yes, the loss of nitric oxide production, coupled with a world that has increasing oxidative stress, that is the 1-2 punch for cardiovascular disease risk. And we really owe it to ourselves and our families to really pay attention to it and do something about it.
Does it work better in conjunction with estrogen?
Yes, I have seen
Okay.
both. So we know that nitric oxide, one of the signaling mechanisms is that it boosts energy through a process known as mitochondrial biogenesis. That is the creation of new healthy mitochondria from older mitochondria that are losing their function. They regenerate by combining forces. They join together. Two older mitochondria join together to make one fabulous new one, and we start to see a better energy because we have more mitochondrial energy output, greater ATP. So we know nitric oxide contributes to that. We also know that estrogen therapies have a major role in increasing oxygen. It's
Yeah.
sort of they go hand in hand. When we start to have activated estrogen receptors turning on our own endogenous internal nitric oxide enzymes, we start to see that boost in nitric oxide. We can tell that with our test strips,
Yeah.
and we see energy increase twofold at that point. I think that's the biggest benefit I hear people say from starting to work on their nitric oxide status is I have more energy every single day. I'm not craving that afternoon cup of coffee. I don't have that slump. And to go with that energy is mental clarity and mental focus. And I just think of it as mental energy, right?
Yeah.
So I know when I eat a pretty healthy diet. I'm not perfect. I do have charcuterie once in a while, but I make sure I eat my leafy green vegetables. But I take my dietary nitrate supplement from Barkley Life every single day. And if I forget a day, the first thing I feel is like, why am I so tired? Why am I so
Really?
sluggish? Why can't I finish this task that I'm on? And it's very noticeable. And it happens real quickly when people optimize their nitric oxide production.
Well, do you know that the number one symptom reported of midlife women is lack of energy? Out of all of them, hot flashes, night, like the mental stuff, the number one complaint is
Yes.
lack of energy.
Yes. Number one complaint. If your listeners haven't taken the menopausal quality of life survey that's used quite frequently in research, I've heard you talk before about how many menopause and perimenopause symptoms are there. Well,
Mhm.
some lists will say there's 48 and some will say there's 103. Doesn't really matter, but I just encourage women to look up these surveys about quality of life. Energy is a huge piece of quality of life, and look for the ones that target peri and menopausal symptoms. You can find them, just Google it, you can find it online. And when you sit down and take those quizzes for yourself, you start to recognize some of those signs and symptoms that most women just think are a normal part of aging and
Yes.
that there's nothing they can do about it. But instead, this could be the key to making a woman wake up and go, I'm going to see my functional medicine provider. I'm going to start some hormone therapy. I'm definitely going to boost my nitric oxide production. So I
Yeah.
want to encourage women to kind of take charge by, you got to take a look at ourselves, right? We got to awaken to what's going on within us. And these surveys that are used widely in research are really helpful for that.
Yeah, they are. Are there any other hormones that impact like the testosterone, progesterone, oxytocin? Is there anything else that's related with the nitric oxide production?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We know that well, we could be here for an hour talking about all of them. So we'll just keep the list simple. So we know that Estrogen boosts nitric oxide production, and nitric oxide boosts blood flow to carry that messaging around the body. We know that that testosterone stimulates nitric oxide production. That's necessary for sexual function for both men and women. So we need good blood perfusion to the reproductive organs to be able to be receptive, to have good lubrication. That's a very important mechanism of testosterone in a woman's body. We also know that that nitric oxide stimulates the anterior pituitary and starts the cascade of sex hormones. So we know that from the very beginning of the productive process of those cholesterol-based hormones, nitric oxide plays a role in signaling that cascade. We know that nitric oxide signals oxytocin release, and that's your love and connectivity hormone. This is why in our female sexual function clinical trials, we're starting to see 83% of respondents report increased desire, increased orgasm, better lubrication,
Wow.
but better connectivity. You know, that libido is I don't know, libido to me is, everybody should have it, but it's more special when you're connected to the person you have it for.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we can use a dietary supplement and some lifestyle behaviors that help us boost that oxytocin hormone, let's do it, and let's make
Let's
everybody
do
feel
it.
more connected.
Yeah, and it's the same, like nitric oxide is what or how a man, not just purely, but how a man gets an erection, is it not?
Yes, yes. But it's also how a woman is receptive to, if we're talking about male female sex, it's
Yeah.
also how a woman is receptive to receiving, because we need engorged tissues just as much as a man does. Our appendage just happens to be internal instead of external. So we don't think about it
Yes.
as much. Yeah. But definitely women need the blood flow to enjoy and receive and feel really satisfied by sex.
Yeah, I remember Susan, she brought out like the whole diagram. I'm going to link to those I have two episodes with her and they're both fantastic. So I'll link to
Great.
those in the show notes, everyone, but she pulled out a diagram and she was showing how the vaginal tissue is exactly the same basically as a man's, but yes, inside, and that importance of nitric oxide to engorge all of the tissue so that it's ready to have sex, and that women, it just takes a lot longer. Well, also because we have a lack of it in midlife. And she was saying it's about 20 minutes, typically, like on average, to get
Mhm.
that engorgement. Unlike a man who it's just like, so
Yeah.
there's a little difference, but but
Well,
the importance of it and how that's like has so much to do with libido. And women are always asking me like, oh, I started estrogen, I started testosterone. Why am I not, having my libido come back? I thought this was going to be, the answer to
yeah.
my low libido in midlife. And it's that missing piece of possibly that it's nitric oxide.
This is one of the favorite customer inputs that we hear at Berkeley Life, and they will get past my way. We tend to get a lot of older men using our Berkeley Life product for erectile dysfunction. Inevitably they tell their wife, well, if it's good for me, it should be good for you. And so we're getting respondents, in their 70s, 80s, and 90s with a vibrant active sex life, and they're attributing it to boosting their
I
nitric
love
oxide or their
it.
NO. And I am all for it. These are some happy reports we're
Yes.
getting,
Yeah.
and I like to see those.
I love it. Where does it come into play when it comes to our skin? I mean, we all, as midlife women, we're trying to preserve our skin because it's like it rapidly starts to decline as we hit midlife and it's freaky. And it's like, oh my gosh, look at my skin. How does it? I was very surprised to see that in your notes that you had sent me about nitric oxide, that it was good for skin.
It is. Well, so nitric oxide plays a role in signaling collagen production. So
Of
we can
course.
consume collagen and we can consume vitamin C, which vitamin C is the primary antioxidant found in nitrate rich foods. And that's, we get vitamin C serums and we see, nitric oxide supplements, including our own, have a good portion of vitamin C with them to provide that antioxidant support. But nitric oxide is signaling collagen production. It's also a wound healer. So we have a lot of med spas that use our products, and they use it, pre and post procedure to promote wound healing. We know that NO signals laying down of healthy new fibroblasts in tissue. So if you have a cut or a scar, nitric oxide is coming to your rescue by helping you lay down new healthy cells to heal that over. So it's a big piece of it. And we also know that it plays a role just because anytime you improve blood flow, you
Right.
improve oxygen and nutrient delivery to all the tissues of the body. So that includes your skin. So your skin is simply being fed better by improving your nitric oxide status. We've had some company wide webinars and had members of the viewing public come on and say, how come y'all's skin looks so great? Well, because we're all taking dietary nitrates to support ourselves. We're also all, healthy, holistic minded
Of
people, but
course.
yeah, we credit the nitric oxide for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. What about metabolism? And does that relate to thyroid? Because whenever I think of metabolism and basal metabolic rate, I'm thinking thyroid, and that depletes too as we age. It's, I call it the thyropause.
Yeah.
Does nitric oxide play a role in that?
It does. And I love this because, everybody's really into, weight management through additions that to me feel like they're 8 steps down the line. We could try something really foundational.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
nitric oxide, again, as a signaling molecule in the digestive system, it does a few things. First of all, it signals a very important molecule inside your cells called it's a GLUT4 transporter protein. It signals it to come to the surface of your cell to grab glucose from the bloodstream that's been transported there by insulin and making your cell more efficient at using that blood sugar for energy. We also know that it plays a role in insulin sensitivity. So your insulin response will be more balanced and more appropriate, keeping your blood sugars balanced. That is also effective at weight balancing there as well too. Nitric oxide in the intestinal tract, because it's signaling the relaxation of smooth muscles, it helps with gastric motility. So that's everything from your esophagus being able to squeeze and contract as we swallow, to your stomach churning, to your intestinal tract having peristaltic waves to carry the nutrients along for absorption into the body. It plays a role in lower intestinal gastric motility as well too. And all of that has to do with your metabolic activity from that digestive standpoint. Now you talk about the thyroid, and we know that nitric oxide helps signal the conversion of T4 to T3. It's important in that
I did not know
activation.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's what I mean about when I started studying all the
Yeah, it's
mechanisms of
fascinating.
action of NO in the body. I could go on for days because we know mechanistically how this really small molecule that we get from eating spinach, kale, arugula, beets, um, it plays such a vital role in all of that. I happen to work with a lot of autoimmune disordered thyroid patients myself.
Yeah.
And one of the concerns that they've been told, and that I've told them in the past, is that they can't eat their leafy greens because they're goitrogens. They can't eat, they can't stimulate too much nitric oxide production because there's already an excess of nitric oxide from what's called inducible nitric oxide synthase. This is happening when our immune system is out of control and damaging, attacking the thyroid and creating an autoimmune situation. However, there's a lot of evidence in the research that by ingesting dietary nitrates on a daily basis and making sure you have a constant, steady, sustainable supply of the raw ingredients to make nitric oxide in the bloodstream, it actually dampens down the inflammatory response going on. So many of my patients who find themselves in an autoimmune thyroid flare up do well to supplement with dietary nitrates, bringing that flare up down, and they can still enjoy those foods as long as we make sure their digestive tract is working well. So
Right.
I find it a win-win, and I'm out to kind of bust that myth, if you will,
Yeah.
that anybody with autoimmune conditions shouldn't take this because they already have an inflammatory level of nitric oxide. That's happening at a localized level. We want to systemically replenish the shelves of something that your body needs for every system of the body and make sure the body's not trying to hyper react in this other corner of the body.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that, I mean, I've looked at thousands and thousands of women's labs that are in midlife, and the number one thyroid issue that we see, because there's many different hypothyroidism root causes. The number one that I see in peri and menopausal women is the conversion slows down from the inactive thyroid hormone T4 to the active hormone T3. And we see that, I would say, probably 80% of women. And it's, sometimes we use medication to top it up, but a lot of the time, if we can kind of get all these other things supported and these other hormones supported, you'll see that conversion start to work a little bit better. But I'm now thinking that nitric oxide is going to have to be part of that solution of the root cause of let's improve that conversion rate because that is where we see it being the most common issue for developing that slowed metabolism. Women start to gain, it contributes to the weight gain in midlife, it contributes to the energy levels, the brain function, the skin. And so, if we can improve thyroid function and that conversion rate, then we won't need to use medication.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
have a couple studies tucked away. I'll send your way, and you can sort of have some validation about that. But I think you're on a great track there.
Ooh, okay. That's good. And so if it helps with our energy, I also see that it helps with sleep. So like, I know it seems like it's going to just help with absolutely everything, but these are the biggest complaints of women in midlife. So how can it impact sleep quality?
Yeah. So mechanistically, we know that nitric oxide signals the anterior pineal gland, which is where melatonin is produced and released. So it plays
Ah,
a sort of an indirect role in soothing the sleep wake cycle and the release of melatonin. Couple that with it's working as a retro neurotransmitter in the brain to help calm the stress response. So a lot of people, a lot of women are having sleep issues because their cortisol is also out of balance. And so um, there a lot of brain research going on about nitric oxide in cognitive health and in mental and emotional health. And we have to remember that in the middle of the night, there's a stress response that you're not even aware of that's kicking up your cortisol. And nitric oxide, if the body can respond appropriately by having the right replenishment stores on hand, can quench that cortisol response and not let it get so out of control. That also contributes to if you're not getting those cortisol spikes in the middle of the night, you're not waking up and having a hard time
yeah,
getting back to sleep because your mind is now racing with the
which is a
75 things.
huge problem. Yeah.
It's a huge
Yeah,
problem.
for
Yeah.
myself and for so many women where they're like, yeah, I wake up every day at 3 a.m. and my brain's just going and I can't shut it off and I can't fall back to sleep. It's big.
Yeah. What I'm doing with a lot of my patients is once they sort of they adopt what I call the nitric oxide lifestyle. There's lots of lifestyle factors that have to happen for them to keep that sustainable level of raw ingredient on hand and keep that recycling process going effectively. Once they get that going, we might actually add another dose of dietary nitrates later in the day to ensure that they're going to have adequate stores overnight as they sleep. I don't start
Mm,
people later in the day because when you boost blood flow, sometimes it can feel overstimulating. And women can complain that, oh, I couldn't sleep because I was too boosted by the nitric oxide. Well, you were probably boosted by having more energy production and more oxygen utilization than you've had in years. So let's let
wow.
some time go by, and it can be quick. It could be 2 weeks to 4 weeks to let the body get sort of recalibrated to the lifestyle and the diet and the supplementation so that they have that more steady state to draw from.
Yeah.
And I've seen it improve sleep and I've seen it improve those vasomotor symptoms of hot flashes and night sweats too.
Oh,
Not every
wow.
woman, it's not always the single piece of the puzzle, but we know again that nitric oxide as that retro neurotransmitter plays a role in our serotonin levels, and your serotonin hormone is responsible for your vasomotor signs of hot flashes and night sweats. So
Mm.
when we find that women are sort of serotonin deficient, then we start to see those vasomotor problems getting worse. So you boost the neurotransmitter activity with dietary nitrates. It starts to send a reverse signal back to the brain to say we need a little more serotonin, maybe uptake a little bit more, and we see the hot flashes and the night sweats reduce.
Ooh, I'm such a night sweater, hot flasher. I'm very prone to it. So, has there been any research done on nitric oxide depletion and any sort of increased rate or I guess just with Alzheimer's and dementia, like not that it's a cause, but are they seeing that this could be part of the reason why Alzheimer's and dementia can go up?
Yeah, absolutely. I've found some researchers, a research team out of London, Exeter University, led by a researcher, Joanna LaRue. And I'm following her work because she's studying exactly that. And she's studying the relationship of the balance and diversity of the oral microbiome, which helps us break down those nitrates the second time so that we swallow them as nitrite and they're more effective for us now. And the link to cognitive decline, especially in individuals with a known APO, I can't say it, that APO4
APO, yeah, yeah,
E.
yeah.
Yeah. So yes, there's a huge research team looking at just that about the role of when these oral microbes are compromised and nitric oxide is depleted, cognitive decline, especially in these gene variant individuals, is worsening over time. And what can we do? So it's definitely related to yeah, the depletion of NO.
Because I have got, I think there's, I don't, I'm not a genetic person, but it's like the two out of the three ApoE4 SNPs. And so I have an increased risk of getting Alzheimer's and dementia. My grandfather died of Alzheimer's. And so I'm always on the lookout for, okay, what can help support that? So, and
Yeah.
it just seemed like with everything you're saying about nitric oxide and its mechanisms of action on the mitochondria and all of this brain health, it's like, well, then it probably does have something to do with the onset or you know, the development of Alzheimer's or dementia.
And this is where the test strips come in for you, the nitric oxide test strips.
Hmm.
So you were at the conference and you
Yeah.
tested and you were pretty zero on the
Yeah.
scale. Did you
Definitely.
then take a dose of the
Yes.
Oxide Foundation and test again 90 minutes
Yes.
later? And did you see improvement on?
Yes.
Okay, that's a great sign. That's a great
Yeah.
sign that your oral microbiome contains the appropriate species to help you break down nitrates. And that's going to be the important piece for you, knowing that you have those APOE4 genes. You want to keep that oral microbiome healthy so that it continues to help you make nitric oxide through that recycling pathway. So, to that end, it's things like one of the lifestyle features we talk about in terms of not reducing nitric oxide, but rather promoting it is just good oral hygiene. But that's
Okay.
oral hygiene that doesn't include the commonly used antiseptics and antimicrobials. This
Okay.
whole idea of oral systemic health, that the mouth is a separate piece from the body, is being debunked. We work closely with the American Academy of Oral Systemic Health, and there are a lot of great dental providers and airway specialists and things out there studying this right now and using this in practice. But it's very important to keep those microbes healthy by not using highly antiseptic mouthwashes that are pretty common on the commercial market. They're called chlorhexidine
Okay.
based products. There's evidence that fluoride toothpaste can be too damaging to the oral microbiome. And it's really better to just
Oh.
have good mechanical oral hygiene, meaning great brushing and flossing and water pick, and stay away from some of those things that are highly antimicrobial. That would include some things that seem kind of holistic, like excessive oil pulling or excessive use of antibacterial essential oils. They
I
can
was gonna
be,
say tea tree oil mouthwash.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
An excessive use of that can, like, they definitely do a job to dampen down acidic producing microbes, but they also can damage the very beneficial ones that we need for a variety of functions, including nitric oxide production. So we want to get into oral hygiene habits that are microbe preserving rather than killing. And there are other ways to ensure that you don't get cavities and you don't get gum disease. And that's usually by making sure you have a mineral rich diet with plenty of antioxidants in it. We know that zinc is important to gum health and it prevents plaque. And that's why it's in so many oral products. But we want people to really focus on oral hygiene from that more think about your microbes and take care of the community that's in your mouth.
Would, as a practitioner, do you then recommend fluoride-free toothpaste for yourself and your kids?
I do. I do.
Okay.
And there are
Yeah.
other ways to get those enamel boosting minerals in the diet. And so for families, yeah, I like to work with them about, let's keep the antioxidants high and the minerals high. And yes, get your kids to brush and floss their teeth and drink pure water. And then there's other habits that help us build nitric oxide, but that also when we correct the bad habit, we can preserve the oral microbiome. And in our culture, we have a lot of people who have become mouth breathers rather than
Hmm.
nasal breathers. And it's really important. We make a lot of nitric oxide in the paranasal cavities right here. And think about how close those tissues are to the brain and
Yeah.
how we can boost blood flow and oxygenation to the brain. So, practiced nasal breathing, practicing this with the kids at the dinner table, maybe it's part of a prayer or honoring the meal too. Getting us to close our mouths and actually breathe through our nose is automatically going to boost your nitric oxide. And then the more those microbes love mouth breathers because it creates a lot of acidity. So if you're that person who's like hyper exercising all the time and you've sort of trained yourself to always breathe through your mouth, it's a good challenge to go out and take that run or go to that Pilates class or whatever it is you do and try to focus on the nasal breathing, which is way more valuable for preserving the oral microbes and producing nitric oxide.
What about mouth taping for sleep?
Yeah, mouth
Yeah.
taping is a great idea. Yeah. And then I happen to be one of those people that I'm a mold toxicity recovered person. I went through a
Yeah.
whole huge health issue with it. And I had become a mouth breather simply because I couldn't breathe through my sinus
Because
cavities
you were
anymore
so congested
because
from
I
the
was so
molds.
congested from the mold.
Hmm.
And it's a habit I've worked on for gosh, 8 years now to try to retrain that breathing pattern. And guess what? When you practice breath work, you tend to get a little more calming and a little more energy. And the two go together, and life's a little more tolerable just with some simple breath work.
Yeah,
And
and
that's your
how
MO.
many people that have sleep apnea, both men and women, especially in their later, after 40 or 50, that really goes up, that rate of sleep apnea, which that
Yes.
person is breathing a lot through their mouth.
Yes. And this is why through the Oral Systemic Health Academy, we have a lot of myofunctional therapists and other
Yeah.
airway passage specialists, especially with the kids, coming to us to talk about boosting nitric oxide and all the habits we just discussed,
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
correct those patterns in people.
Yeah. Start early, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm not one for fluoride either. My kids don't like the taste of non-fluoride toothpaste, unfortunately, but we try to avoid the fluoride treatment at the dentist. And the dentist, of course, they always look at you like you're this horrible mother because you're declining the fluoride tray. And my kids are like, I hate the taste of it. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, good, because I'm not going to have them do it. I'll do it maybe once a year just to appease my dentist. But I mean, I've never had a fluoride treatment well, since I was a kid, and I don't have a single cavity.
Great. Good for you. I'll give you a
Yeah.
brand recommendation. One of our brand partners
Yes.
is Stella Life. And
Okay.
seems like it goes with Berkeley Life pretty well, but their products are amazing. They're an entire line of dental and oral care products, and they have specialized vitamin formulas for pre and post dental procedures, and they have mouth rinses and toothpastes and all that kind of stuff. And they taste really good. The kids would like them.
Okay, great. Is there anybody that shouldn't take a nitric oxide supplement? Like, is there any contradictions anywhere?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a contradiction, but I would call it a caution to work
Hmm.
with a licensed or a, authorized qualified provider. If you are somebody who is already hypertensive, high blood pressure,
Okay.
and you're on medication, or you have another sort of heart related function, because the boosting of blood flow can happen really quickly. This is why people feel energy, they feel less cold hands and feet, they feel better mental clarity really quickly within 1 to 2 weeks, because their blood has been boosted. Nitric oxide vasodilating the blood vessels helps regulate blood pressure. For those individuals who are already on blood pressure medications, we don't want to drop that, especially the lower
Right.
number, the diastolic number, too quickly. They could get dizzy, lightheaded. We don't want them to have an experience like that. So we recommend working with a qualified provider just to ensure your safety and efficacy. And I just have people start low and slow. They start with 1 capsule a day while monitoring their nitric oxide status with the test strip, and also monitoring their blood pressure, their heart rate, and maybe their heart rate variability. We have a
Mm.
study in our female sexual function clinical trial that there will be a phase 2 trial later in 2026. We used an aura ring and we found some improvements in the women who took nitric oxide foundation just for 30 minutes in sort of that autonomic control of their heart rate variability. And we saw some improvements on HRV, we saw improvements on sleep patterns, and we saw improvements on sort of mood regulation in that study, as well as improved orgasm, lubrication, desire, all the fun things that we get to talk about. And then I'm super
Yes.
excited for Berkeley Life. We are a science forward company. I get to
Yeah.
work with researchers all over the world who are doing incredible research in women's health, and Berkeley Life is trying to help pave the way. And in 2026, we will be doing, it's in the review board status right now, but the researchers are ready to go to do a full perimenopause and menopause study using nitric oxide, measuring blood pressure, measuring heart rate variability, as well as all the copious signs and symptoms that women in midlife are experiencing. So we're pretty excited.
Yay.
Yeah. And we're really hopeful that the data that comes out really proves what we know our product does. So I'm
Yeah,
super
we need
excited
so
about
much more research. So thank you. I'm
that. Yeah.
so happy to hear that. Because women too, I'm thinking this whole time, for the poor women that, or not the poor women, some poor women that can't take HRT, and then there's women that
Yeah.
choose not to take HRT, and I support all women's decisions on this.
Yeah.
And we're always looking for, okay, well, if you can't or you don't choose to take HRT, what then can we give to you or what can you supplement with that will give you the kind of benefits that HRT can give a woman? And nitric oxide, it's hitting on so many, as we've discussed, of the top symptoms of menopause. And so that has to be in somebody's arsenal, I think.
Absolutely. And it's definitely become part of my arsenal, and it's become part of my patients' arsenal and my friends.
Hmm.
And to me, the clinical testimonials are even more important than what our research data is going to say.
Yeah.
And I know what it's going to say because it's what my friends are telling me. I'm sleeping better. I have less hot flashes. My belly fat has gone down. I like my partner again a little bit more, and
Yeah.
I'm not screaming at the kids, right? Just so I think for that reason alone, yeah, it should be part of every woman's arsenal, and
Yeah.
it's 2 capsules a day. It's super simple, and
Do you
it's very,
recommend doing the test strips quite often, or is it just kind of in the beginning to see that it's working and where your levels are at?
yeah. Some people are real biohackers, and they like
Yes.
to see that all the time. The the in the beginning, the intention of the test strip is to ensure that your oral microbiome and the rest of
Right.
that system is actually converting your nitrates. So if you would have taken that test, scored zero, taken a 2 capsule dose, and waited 90 minutes, that should be long enough for the enterosalivary recycling pathway to do its magic. And if you take a test again and there's zero change, then we start to suspect you've got a breakdown in the recycling system. And this is where Berkeley Life has a prebiotic nitrate chewing gum. And we have a new
Mm.
formula coming out in about 2 weeks. I've tried it, it's really amazing. It also has a couple probiotic species in it. And what we're doing is we're chewing gum 5 minutes a day, twice a day, to bathe that oral microbiome in the nutrients that it needs to replenish the nitrate reducing species. Now, when you take your dietary nitrates, either dietarily or through supplements, you're going to see the test strip change because you've changed
Wow.
your ability to process it. And the gum is also a nice pick me up. You mentioned, men needing 20 minutes for blood flow to before sex.
No, women, not men.
Yeah, women needing that. So this is where the gum comes in because I use the gum as a performance aid all the time. I use it on
What?
my way to yoga class or to take a hike. You can use it if you know you have planned sexual activity coming up, use it 20, 30 minutes before then. You will feel the energy boost and you will feel the blood flow boost.
Wow. That is
Little hot
interesting.
tip from Cathy.
That's a really good selling tip. This is like pre-sex gum, everyone.
It kind of is pre-sex gum.
Add it to the foreplay.
Hey, baby. And
Right?
and there's no no sugars and no artificial flavorings anyway. It's really benign mint flavor that's naturally sweetened. It's I'm not even a gum chewer and I like it, but I more importantly, I like the benefit.
When it comes to men and erectile dysfunction, which tends to happen as they age,
Yes.
is this a really great, it's got to be a great addition. It has got to help so many men with erectile dysfunction.
It is. One of our medical advisory board members is a pharmacist, Dr. Greg McKettrick, and he has a nationally known erectile dysfunction protocol that he trains other providers in. And it's all over the US and I believe up in Canada as well too. And our product is a part of that protocol simply for boost blood flow, boost tissue perfusion, and you're going to see some results. And the great thing is it's safe and effective for use in conjunction with PDE5 inhibitors. It follows the same mechanism. And so, as long as you're working with a qualified provider, they can be used together effectively. And what Dr. McKettrick will tell us is that it extends a man's duration of use of those medications so that they can take them
So, like
longer.
Viagra, are you saying?
Yes,
Yeah,
Viagra,
okay.
Cialis, those kinds
Right.
of, yeah, they can use them more effectively for a longer duration of time.
Okay. Yeah. I I know that things like L-citrulline, is that a precursor to nitric oxide? Because I see guys taking that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up because
Okay.
it is the enzyme pathway. The pathway uses L-arginine, and then L-citrulline is kicked out of that pathway as a byproduct of making nitric oxide in the body. This is
Okay.
again separate from the dietary nitrates. The problem with the formulas that use L-arginine or L-citrulline is they tend to overdrive an enzyme pathway that's already starting to decline in function because they're aging, and now you're pouring in too much of an amino acid that is think of it as an overflowing funnel. You're putting in too much amino acid into a funnel that won't accept it all. It's spilling over the side and it's creating secondary effects. And one of the secondary effects that's being studied from overutilization of citrulline and arginine is the fact that it starts to increase viral load. If you've got a low level virus in your body, which most people do, anybody who's been vaccinated has a low level virus in their body, right, from childhood
Hmm.
vaccines and all that. But we're seeing a rise in vaccines like Epstein-Barr virus, and it's indicated in individuals who are hyper supplementing with those amino acids. So we
Okay.
don't want to create an immune condition on top of an erectile dysfunction.
No. I don't think my partner would want that. No.
No.
No
No.
male partner.
No. No.
Okay. Well, I think it's clear that nitric oxide needs to be in the menopause toolbox. And it's going to, in our practice, we're going to start talking about this a lot more, especially when we work with those women one on one. And it's something that should be recommended, I think, for all of us by the sounds of it, except,
It,
like you said, if there's a heart condition or you work with your physician with this,
yes.
if there's some sort of underlying, thing going on there. Migraines is another thing. That's the reason I didn't hop on nitric oxide right away was I knew that it was a vasodilator and I have chronic migraines. And so I was always hesitant and wasn't sure if that would be a fit for somebody that was prone to migraines. Now, when I took your guys' nitric oxide at the conference, it certainly did not trigger any migraine. So that was a good sign. But what about people like myself who are prone to migraines?
Yeah, this is an important question. I'm glad you brought it up, especially as it relates to the decline in estrogen. So we've talked about the decline in estrogen
Mhm.
leads to less nitric oxide production, leads to um, more vascular stiffening of the cardiovascular vessels. Nitric oxide prevents platelet aggregation, so it helps prevent blood clots in general. I'm not going to say it's a blood clot remedy, but mechanistically, that's what it does. And in migraine, the fear of vasodilation is valid, but it's really about the vascular stiffness and integrity and flexibility and the ability to constrict and contract and at the same or opposite of vasodilation. So we know that nitric oxide relaxes smooth muscles to contribute to vasodilation. That relaxation of smooth blood vessels sends a secondary signal to bring in the constricting proteins that help then constrict the blood vessel. This is how our blood vessels work. They're supposed to relax and constrict. Just like we work out our muscles, we need to work out our vascular tissue so that it has good tone, good
Right.
flexibility, less stiffness. And so by easing with migraine sufferers, we again recommend let's go low and slow. Let's add these habits to your lifestyle. Exercise, moderate exercise, but not intense, excessive, oxidatively stressful exercise. Let's work on the breathing exercises and avoidance of mouth breathing. Let's get the dietary nitrates in your diet, and then let's start supplementing low and slow, just one capsule a day, while you're also, working on getting toxins out of your life and looking at the hormone balance because we know a lot of
Mm.
migraines are hormonally indicated. And that's another thing estrogen does for us. It helps contribute to that reduced vascular stiffening. So the combination of hormone replacement therapy with better blood flow and nitric oxide that's going to repair the endothelial integrity and contribute to less of that stiffening. That's the 1-2 golden ticket to preventive health right there.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm gonna try it then. Because it's like this is like the wonder drug. And I'm like, I gotta get on this. I want to see what it'll do for energy, especially.
Yeah. And people,
Yeah,
people will ask me, well, can I just eat, leafy greens every day? And what I'd like
yeah,
to say is, yeah, I wish we could, but we don't know the nitrate
no,
concentration of the foods we eat anymore. Our soils are depleted. We don't have consistency in nutrition across the foods that we intake. And then we have an increasingly oxidatively stressful world. So we need to do something to bridge the gap. And for
yeah.
me, if it's 2 capsules a day, which by the way, it has helped myself and also a lot of my patients reduce the supplement stack that they need.
Mm,
So as gut motility improves, as intestinal microbial activity improves, as the stress response is calmed down, maybe there's less need for some of the digestive aids and the adrenal adaptogens and
right.
other things like that. So the supplement stack starts to get minimized because you're using something that's so very foundational. And in
Yeah.
my practice, that means my patients can afford better food, a vacation, and maybe something fun new to wear. I'd rather they spend their money on that kind of healthy life than have to buy too many supplements.
Yeah, I feel like we're going upstream with it. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, we're down here, but let's go upstream and get to the root of
Yes.
where kind of some of this begins, and that's part of the depletion of nitric oxide that needs to
Yes.
be restored.
Yes. I think if
Yes.
I had to add one element that I think most women need in midlife that relates to nitric oxide production is vitamin D3. So,
Okay.
vitamin D3, getting out into sunlight stimulates nitric oxide production in the
Mm.
skin. So, it's really important for us to get that natural sunlight, but also to have those levels checked and stay consistent with vitamin D3 levels.
Yeah. So, Kathy, in your practice and what you've seen, are most women and men depleted of nitric oxide? Is it like how common is this?
It is so common that if I had to venture a guess of in my practice, in all the conferences I see, 98% of the individuals who first
Wow.
come up and test are depleted. Now, a one time test is just that it is your snapshot in time where you're at right now. So, back to the testing question. Yeah, I think people, when they get started, they should use the test strips 2, 3, 4 times a day, sort of recognize your patterns of depletion. I find it very motivating for patients. They see a low color on the test strip. It should be bright pink and it's barely tinged pink. They're like, gosh, this is what Cathy told me about. I've got to eat a leafy green salad today. I need to do my breath work activity. Maybe I'm going to take a third capsule, later in the day to try to keep those levels boosted. I find it's just a little hack that people use to keep themselves on track. But no, most
Most people.
everybody I
Yeah.
test is
What
depleted.
about young people? Like when
Young
you
people,
test like teenagers?
yeah, young people are interesting because in my circle, most of the young people are kind of health conscious, and so
Yeah.
they're testing pretty well. But
Okay.
I think going into a school setting where you don't know that every child is being fed as well as the kids around me, maybe we wouldn't see that so much. But we are seeing younger and younger people with depletion. So in their 20s. And that is when nitric oxide production decline starts to happen. Unfortunately, we're seeing more fertility issues, more erectile dysfunction issues
Yeah.
in younger and younger men, more reproductive issues in younger and younger women. So I think if every physician tested with a 10-second salivary test strip, we'd see a lot of depletion.
Yeah, I think so too, which is too
Mhm.
bad. It's just a product of our very depleted environment of
Yeah.
all the good stuff, right? And the
Yes.
good quality foods and which, as you said, it's so hard to avoid that. I mean, this is the way it is, and we can do all that we can and remove all the toxins and eat well and
Yeah.
exercise, but a lot of the time we do need supplementation, and that's just a part of life now.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it's become a part of mine. I'll admit, when I first started as a nutritionist well over 20 years ago, I thought, oh, nobody needs this many supplements. And then I realized the value and the power and how they help us bridge the gap to
Hmm.
what's not in our lifestyle. And I became a believer quickly when I saw people improving. So
Hmm.
it definitely changed my tune there.
All right. Well, I'm going to link to everything in the show notes. It's at Berkeley. You tell me the
Yeah,
URL.
you can find us at berkeleylife.com. It's with three E's, BERKELEY.com. If you have questions for me, reach out to info@berkeleylife.com. I'm the Chief Science Officer. I can share studies, I can answer questions, happy to do that. And I believe there's going to be a link in the show notes for your listeners to receive a discount and try our products. So we'd love to have you
Yeah.
as part of the Berkeley Life community and just see your health optimized as a result of improved NO.
And how quickly do you typically hear that people feel the results? Like, is this the sort of thing that you could take a nitric oxide cap and actually get a boost of energy from it?
Some people do. Some people are
Okay.
really, really body aware, I would say, and they'll come running up and say, "Is it possible I feel my blood flowing more?" It's like, well, I think what you're feeling is increased energy, and we have that conversation. But usually within about 2 weeks, people notice big changes, big shifts in sleep cycles, in those hot flashes and night sweats, and definitely in energy. The thing I hear the most is, I no longer struggle to get out of bed in the morning. I'm waking up with more energy and I have more motivation for the day. And I think anytime we can improve motivation for the day, that's motivation for all the other healthy habits that you and I propose to
Yes.
our patients. And that to me, that's a win.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I always say to women, like sometimes we need to get the raw materials in there so that you can do all of the things that you're supposed to be doing rather than the other way around, which a lot of functional medicine practitioners will be like, well, let's fix the adrenals, let's get you exercising, let's make you eat better. And it's like, I don't want to do that if I feel like crap. If I don't have the energy, I'm going to have cravings. If I'm not sleeping well, I'm going to be insulin resistant, is going to make me want to eat more carbohydrate rich foods. And so I'm a big believer in let's get those foundational pieces in so that you want to, and that it's a lot easier to be healthy and to have a healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely. It all starts with NO and blood flow. It is really that simple.
Yeah, it really is. I'm excited to try it. I'm going to, do you think, would you say to take extra if you're flying? Like I get really affected by flying on airplanes. And you had said, being at the conference that my oxidative stress would have been up. And I know that flying, I I read somewhere recently it was like an insane amount of oxidative stress just from being on an airplane.
Yes, and I do recommend it as part of a travel pack. I
Okay.
usually, when I travel, I take an extra dose. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take two in the morning before I fly. I'll take one right after I get off the flight. I'll take another one before I go to bed. I also carry, like my favorite detox tea, and I boost my antioxidants. So I, try to make sure I eat healthy on the road. That's sometimes hard, as you know.
Hmm.
But I will boost my vitamin C levels, especially knowing if I'm going to go to a restaurant, have a leafy green salad. I can't be sure it's organic all the time. I sure try. I'm going to boost my vitamin C during that travel too, to sort of be that combatant to oxidative stress.
Throw in some gum,
Yep.
some
Throw in the
probiotic gum,
gum.
take my nitric oxide. Okay, good.
Absolutely.
I've got a flight coming up and I always dread them. And I've been trying to put together like a little flying pack,
Okay,
it's just
great.
like that. So that
Yeah,
nitric oxide can become part of that. Well,
yeah.
thank you very much, Kathy. It was so great to finally have somebody to come talk to us all about nitric oxide and the importance of it in midlife women. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Wishing you the best midlife too.